The sharp cracking thud of the heavy military envelope hitting the glass coffee table cut right through the dramatic yelling on the widescreen television. For a split second, the living room went completely still. The suffocating smell of synthetic vanilla air fresheners filled the room, making my lungs ache for the dry wind of the desert. I stood dead center in the middle of the carpet, shoulders back, posture rigid, and my hands clasped firmly behind my spine. My father let out an irritated groan, shifting his weight on the plush leather couch. He reached out a lazy hand, grabbing the official invitation from the Department of Defense. His thumb brushed over the raised gold seal before he flipped it open. His eyes scanned the crisp lettering, but his face did not soften. There was no pride in his eyes, no relief that his daughter had returned home alive from a bloody deployment. Instead, he just sneered at the paper, tossing it back onto the table like a piece of worthless junk mail. He looked up at me, his eyes cold and full of deep disdain. He told me that they would never stand next to someone like me, calling me a disgrace who smelled of blood and filthy sweat. He said my sister had an important launch party at the most exclusive restaurant in the city that night, and they would not miss it for my pathetic ceremony. My mother picked up the gold-embossed pass and casually tossed it directly into the trash can next to the kitchen counter. She chimed in, saying my sister was going to be the face of a major cosmetic line, while I was just a grunt who dragged broken bodies through the dirt. They told me to get out of their house and stop dragging my filthy war baggage into their clean lives. I did not yell, nor did I shed a single tear. My jaw remained set as I reached down, retrieved the VIP pass from the trash, and tucked it neatly into the inner pocket of my dress uniform jacket. I looked them both in the eye, gave a quiet nod, and walked out the door. They thought they were snubbing me, but they had just walked blindly into a trap they would never recover from. 3 hours later, I was standing at rigid attention in the grand auditorium of the Pentagon. Dozens of high-ranking generals, political figures, and international diplomats sat in the polished wooden rows before me. Bright stage lights beamed down on my chest as the 4-star general stepped up to the podium to present me with the Silver Star for gallantry in action. I looked down at the reserved front row seating. The velvet-lined chair with my family name on it was conspicuously empty, right next to the high-ranking military commanders. But the empty space did not bother me at all. In fact, it was the most critical part of my plan. Sitting right beside that empty seat was a sharp-looking man in a tailored suit, holding a thick leather briefcase. He was an investigator from the Military Financial Crimes Division, flanked by 2 federal marshals in plain clothes. I'd spent the entire morning providing the military intelligence branch with every bank record, credit report, and forged allotment form my parents had used to fund their fake luxury lifestyle. The 4-star general cleared his throat, adjusting his microphone as the live broadcast streamed out to millions of viewers nationwide. The general began reading my official citation, describing how I had crawled through heavy mortar fire to save 12 wounded soldiers. But then, right on live television, he took a scripted pause and addressed the public directly. He announced that the military was not just honoring my bravery today, but was also taking immediate, decisive action to protect service members from severe domestic financial exploitation. He pointed directly to the front row, explaining that while my biological parents had chosen to skip this ceremony to celebrate a fraudulent lifestyle, the federal government was stepping in. On live television, the investigator opened his briefcase and produced a series of emergency federal seizure warrants and frozen asset notices, reading the case details directly into the broadcasting cameras. The general announced that effective immediately, the federal government was seizing the luxury vehicle purchased with my stolen military hazard pay, foreclosing on the fraudulently mortgaged home, and placing a complete freeze on every single bank account tied to my parents and sister. Millions of people watched as my family name was exposed on national news for systematic fraud and financial abuse against an active duty combat veteran. An hour later, I was sitting alone in the quiet cab of my truck, watching the rain hit the windshield. The dark interior of the vehicle was illuminated only by the frantic flashing of my cell phone screen resting on the passenger seat. 49 missed calls and dozens of frantic text messages were piling up every single minute from the very people who had cast me aside. My mother was sending text after text in complete hysterics, screaming that federal agents had just marched into the high-end restaurant where they were celebrating. They had served my sister with an immediate eviction notice for her downtown apartment and impounded the luxury vehicle right out of the valet parking lot in front of her high society sponsors. My father was leaving desperate voicemails, begging me to call the military prosecutors and tell them it was all a big misunderstanding. He claimed they were going to lose everything they owned by sunrise if I did not fix this. But as I listened to the frantic vibrations of the phone, I felt nothing but a deep, quiet sense of absolute peace. I reached over with my thumb and pressed down hard on the power button, watching the screen go completely black. The silence that filled the truck was warm and comforting, completely washing away the years of guilt and manipulation I had carried on my shoulders. I put the truck in drive and slowly pulled out into the open night road, leaving their chaos behind for good. They had spent years treating me like a disposable resource, assuming I would always be there to absorb their debts and subsidize their greed. They truly believed that their social status and shallow appearances made them untouchable, while my sacrifice meant nothing. But they failed to realize that the same discipline, patience, and strategic focus I used to survive a war zone would eventually be turned against them. As I drove toward my new life, I realized a powerful truth that had taken me years of pain to finally understand. Blood relation does not give anyone a license to drain your soul, and true honor is never found in pleasing people who only value you for what you can give them. You cannot save people who view your survival as a threat to their comfort. And sometimes, the greatest victory is simply letting toxic people destroy themselves with their own unchecked greed.